Good morning. Welcome to Verity Solutions training. Today we're going to be covering the technical topics. You can also visit us at http://veritysolutions.com, or you can also go to YouTube and search for Verity Solutions. Today we're going to be covering SAP technical topics such as SAP tables, programs, function modules, idocs, LSMW, batch input session, scheduling SAP jobs, user parameters, and all the technical topics that we can cover as long as the time permits. We'll probably go for like 2 to 3 hours. And I am recording this session, and this will be available, on YouTube, shortly. So what I'm going to do right now is jump into the SAP GUI. So if you're familiar with SAP GUI, and if you're not familiar with SAP GUI, this is where you log in and kind of from your laptop, and you're logging into the application server, which will be connecting to the backend database server. And you're just going to be, if you're already had functional training, you probably know FI or MM or other modules. But if you have not, then this is just the front end of SAP, and we're going to kind of get into each of those topics. All of the technical topics are in tools module. I know some of you have training in accounting and logistics, MM, and things like that. They're over here, and all of the technical modules are in this section called tools. And there is a this class is geared more towards functional people who needs to have a little bit idea about SAP Technical, or somebody who has no clue of SAP and needs to learn about SAP both. But if you're a SAP Technical person, such as like an ABAP person or an idoc person, and this will be pretty basic stuff for you guys. So the intent is for SAP functional people, SAP very first time users to just understand some of the technical aspects of what is SAP and how to use some of those things. First, let me get into the tables. What are tables, and how do we open a table within SAP? Anytime using transactions. Okay, so let me start with something that you guys already know, FB50. Anytime that you're posting something in accounting, RMM, RSV, or anything, any transactional data that you are posting within SAP, SAP translates that in the backend and pushes us into the tables. And when you have taken the SAP functional class, the instructor should have given you the list of tables behind the scenes that are used for that particular function module. And if not, you can always Google. The first thing is SAP tables in FICO, or SAP tables in MM, SAP tables in SD, SAP tables in logistics, SAP tables in whatever module, PM, PP, QM. So you can search, get a list of all the tables, get them handy, and I'll show you how to the transaction code where you can actually go and look at a table. So the table code is SE16. You can go from the SAP menu, tools, ABAP, workbench overview, and go to SE16, or you can just go here directly and do SE16 and go from there. Okay. So I'm just going to go to SE16. I know for the finance people, the table that you're going to be posting SAP financial documents is BKPF, and I'm just browsing, and it's gonna bring up some very familiar information: company code, document number, fiscal year. This should be pretty much like your FBO3. If I go back to your kind of FBO3, like looking at the documents, kind of pretty much same thing. It kind of doing the same thing, but in a kind of back-end way. So I clicked on BKPF, that's a table, and I'm looking at the company code 1000, and I'm just going to pull all the documents that are posted in 2014, and I'm looking at all the document types SC, and I'm just pulling all the information. This says there is nothing. I wonder why. Oh, sorry, SA. Let us see. So just pulling all the information, but this data looks a lot different than what you see from FBO3. This is just a direct table dump, just bringing 59 rows, and you can see to the left and right there's just a lot of data, and sometimes you may or may not be able to make out of what this data really is. You really need to know in agent. Some of things are very familiar: company code, document number, year, document type, document date, posting date, period, entry date, time, who last changed it. I can kind of go on, reference thing that you entered, document header, exchange rate. This is the header table, so all the header information should be right here. You should not be able to see any line item details in this particular table, BKPF. Okay, and I can always click on one of these things and go look at the detail. Just that one line item, you can show kind of different perspective here. Okay? So what can you do with this data? What are you supposed to do? If there's any production problems, you doing some slicing and dicing, you can always export it to an Excel sheet, like a spreadsheet. Okay, and I can go back here, go to, let's say, an Excel sheet. Always use a selected format, open up, and it's gonna bring this data into an Excel sheet for you. So it's asking me where do I save it. It's gonna say SAP demo. I can always just put it on my desktop, open that up. It did open it up. So this has all the information in an Excel format. So if you're an Excel guru, you can kind of do, slice and dice, do filtering, do sorting, formatting, printing, whatever you can do. So now you took raw SAP data into an Excel table, and you can do some research on the table. This is kind of another way, instead of going to FBO3, putting in a report and kind of looking at some piece of information. This is kind of much faster way of kind of slicing and dicing the data. Okay, so I'll show you another table. One is BKPF, one is called BSAG table. This should be where your line item should be posted. Same thing, company code 1000. I'm going to put in fiscal year 2014. I don't know the line items at this point, so I'm just going to put in everything. It's going to be a lot of data. It's going to probably take some time. Got in like 269 records, and these are line item details. You can see the posting key, 40, 50, and you can see the accounting type and all those things, debits and credits, and you should be able to see the amounts and dollar amounts and currencies and all those things here. Okay, so you can do the same thing. Take it to Excel. You can sort it, sum it. You can do some things, right here. Some sorting, some basic stuff, and you can kind of look at that. Look at the, details of that particular transaction, and go from there. So I'm going to show you some other related tables. It's called Mara table. Okay, so I'm looking at the materials right now. All the materials. I'm just going to put in like maybe 1 to 1000. I'm not going to bring all the materials. So it's all the materials that were created in Mara table. So if you know the table, if you know what are you doing, if you kind of understand the business processes behind the scenes, you should be able to pull a table and then kind of quickly put it in Excel and then kind of start using that. So that's kind of the basic concept of data, browsing the data within SAP directly, not going through the transaction. So the step one is get to know the tables, BKPF and BSEG, um, your vendor, SAP vendor information, material information. If you have taken any of the classes, instructor should have given you a list of tables. I think I probably did send a list of tables to most of you guys. If not, let me show you really quick. Transaction codes. You should list of tables. Let me show this to you for 1 second. I have some examples of the tables. If it is FICO, it's BSEG, BKPF. SKA1 is the accounts where you store the accounts. You have the open item tables, BSIS, BSED, BSEC, and you also have LFA1, LFB1 vendor tables, ANLB1. Some of the examples, I don't want to go through every single table here, but the transaction code and the table, that's how they're kind of related together. Okay? Huh? The icon, Excel icon, I mean import. Yeah. Right here, import is an Excel spreadsheet. A lot of icons at the very top. You can like select all, unselect all. You can sort ascending, descending. You can do sum with right here. You can also do print preview. You can print the data. You can export it to Excel. You can put it in a Word document. Well, it doesn't make any sense, but you can put in a Word document. You can save this thing in a .csv file. You can email the whole thing. You can also change the layout. You can add more columns to it. There's a lot of like small windows kind of things. You can kind of play around with, what columns you see, what columns you don't see, and things like that. So you have to play around with it, really. Um, so we have seen the tables part. The next thing I would like to get you into is the ABAP functional editor. It's called SE38. A majority of the SAP transactions are tied to an SAP program. An SAP program can be executed using SE38. So for example, I know some of you are in the FI class here. Let me go to FB50. Okay. If I go to FB50, if I look in the column at the very bottom here, you should show the program. It's called SAP MF05A. SAP MF05A. Okay. Remember that, SAP MF05A. I'll check your memory in a second. SAP MF05A, right? That's the program that, so you can do a couple of things. The transaction code FB50 has been mapped to this program. Ultimately, it has to call a program within SAP. So this is the program that system calls. So you can also go directly to the program and then run it, and it should do pretty much the same thing. Is bringing FB50 back for you. It's kind of working, I guess. It's not doing anything. Let me try another one. SAP MF05A. SAP MF05A. Okay. No variants. No variants. Let me pick another program. I'm not sure why it's not. Okay, this is another popular program that is used within SAP. I'm just going to run it. What it is trying to do is load documents inside SAP. Load documents inside SAP. So if you have accounting documents in a format that SAP can understand, you can kind of go to the file path, open that up, and then kind of load them into SAP. So this kind of a way to execute SAP. Give me 1 second here. Okay, I'm just going to pick another program. Sometimes these programs have to be of certain type to be able to open it. So I got another program called SAP MF05L. So right now I'm just going to go into say execute. So right now it's doing the pretty much the same thing that I would do like using a transaction. So this is actually from transaction FB03. So I go into FB03. I go to the very bottom and look at the program SAP MF05L. I'm going to go into SC38, and I'm going to look at that. I'm going to execute in the program. So any program, someone says, go to this program and run it. This is how you do it. Go to SC38, open the program, run it. Sometimes the program can have variants. Variants are nothing but predefined data or predefined conditions. Variables are something like, let's say you want to open up a website with certain data. Let's say you're opening up CNN US edition, right? So CNN dot edition is equal to US. So you bookmark that. So you're opening a very specific data. So variants are something like that. So if you can populate pre-populated data within a particular transaction, and I can always go create a particular variant in this example. Let me see. I can open up variants. Let me go open up another program here. This is just an example of running a program with a variant. In this case, the variant name is HIEKO, and he has put some predefined file names or text path within a variant. I can always go open, get variant, and the variant name is HEIKO. Okay. Give me a second here. Okay, I can even change this to TXT. I will save this as a variant. Just file, and I'm going to save it. So now I have another variant called VaritySol test. I can always do a get variant. I'm going to go out now. Variant. There's now a called VaritySol variant, and I click on it. So now, now it should be able to kind of pick it up and run that particular variant. I can also open all the other variants. There are like two variants that we created. I can kind of open the variant and either display it, or I can change it, or I can create a brand new variant for that particular program and then save it. Okay, let's try that. Okay, that particular program has not been defined for selection screen. That's why it's not letting us do it. But a variant is always to open any particular program with some predefined data or conditions. Okay. So we looked at SAP tables, which is SE16, and how to open a program using SE38. Okay, and also if you go into SE16, if you don't know what the table is, you can always do a search, and you can always do show me all the accounting tables. So it's going to show up all the tables that match with the word accounting in it. So if you don't know or unsure of the tables, you should bring up some other tables, like you can see a BKPF, BSAS. These are header tables, like BKPF. Even though if you don't know the table, you can probably bring this up and kind of search through some other tables. And the same way with the program SE38. If you don't know a particular program name, you can always go to information systems, show me all the programming that starts with accounting, and it will show you all the SAP program that will show with accounting. Okay. So this is just a program to start some payroll accounting. I guess it's not an executable program. You can always kind of look for an executable program when you do that. I also want to touch on the transports. Let me do that. Transports are nothing but whenever you make a change to any customizing object, SAP should catch those things in a transport, and this is the way to kind of see all the transports that are okay. There is nothing for this particular thing that we can actually create a transport. You see all that is released. Display. It's pretty unusual. There are no transports. I guess there is nothing. We can always go ahead and create a transport. We can always go to SPRO. Enterprise structure, definition, financial accounting. See, this is the transport. There should be something. Okay. So I'm just gonna look at the transport and I'm gonna say continue. Now the transport has been saved. Go back out. Go into SCO9. Bring up the transport. Okay, it is bringing up the transport, but there is no data inside. So it is bringing up the transport that I just created. It shows E71K9003, and if you kind of drill down, it will show you the object that all the objects that are part of that particular customization. So I think we've been kind of using the same transport probably repeatedly over and over again for a lot of customization. So it has a lot of different objects that are kind of embedded in that particular transport. But if you only do just one transport, for example, I think probably this is the one that we did, T001 table, and that's probably the transport number that we kind of get. And if you have to release it, you can release that. Release means you're moving this from one environment to another environment, moving from dev to QA or QA to production. I can kind of release that. Release. Okay. And it's kind of taking me to the exact place that that particular object would exist. I can go back here. I can click on that particular thing and say release. Release means I'm just moving this the objects from one environment to another environment. Typically, in an SAP environment, you have dev, QA, and production. So by releasing it, you're telling if there is an automatic transport setup, you're moving from dev to QA. If not, you have to take the transport, release it, give it your basis technical people. He will take that and put it in another environment, or from dev to QA, QA to production. Okay. So now I can go back and say, show me all the ones that are released, display. See the system unlocked. Staying back. Now it should show a checkbox saying it should be, kind of released status. You can open up another transport. I don't know. Let's say one. Somebody must have created it. So there is only one object within that. Let me see. Oh, still quite a bit of objects. Like that. That exists in the system. So for that user, David Keller, there are not a lot of IDs. I think, do you have any user number that you have in the system? Try randomly. Doesn't exist. How do we do that? User.
Excuse me, you can go to STMS and look at for the transfer over there.
You can what?
You can go to STMS and look at for the transfer that they are over there and just double click on them. You're gonna find
I'm just trying to open a transport for a given user.
Okay.
Right, so what is your user? When your GUI doesn't open, okay. Now let me go to a brand new transport, I guess, and then try it from there. So I can show that there's one transport existing. You getting the concept of transport? So I'm just gonna, let me create a new one. That's my user number. That's what I say. I'm just gonna keep transport. Looking at what again? I was looking at 399. Yeah, this is the one I just created. E71K009399. So I can go into customizing, and you can see that for that particular transport I touched the company object. So I can also do go click on that. I have to click on that first, release it, and then I have to go back here and then go release that second. Now it's ready to be moved to the next phase. So whatever the company code that I created, 003, is tagged to that particular transport object, and that transport object can be next stage.
Hari class lo kuchunnanu malli chesta. Okay.
I can also go here, same thing. You can go back here, check my transport. It's saying it's bringing my user. It's going to bring my own transports there. We have to see. You have to go into another system and see. You have to log into QA. You have to log into production and see if the transport exists in the new system. Yeah, there are different physical machines, so you have to go back to other systems and actually see it.
Why do we do this?
To move changes from one system to another system.
So we are talking about integration from SAP
Yeah.
to the new
Yeah.
system.
Yep.
Modifying, changing the current system that we have and making a modification.
Making modification of that system. Yep. So we've seen how to browse the tables. We kind of seen a customization and how to move from one environment to another environment. Release doesn't mean that if an automatic transport is set up, they'll go directly, but if automatic transport is not set up, you have to your technical people to move the transport. And we have seen the SE38, how to run a program, and also this is like the ABAP dictionary, and also within a table. So I'm looking at the SAP database table Mara and all the columns and tables within that particular table. This is just informational. Only when you're browsing, if you're just curious, what are the columns and tables in a particular table, what to display and what to import. This is like a data dictionary. Any questions for those who are online? And also just an intro to function modules. Function modules are any programming language has functions. They're repeatable, reusable code. You pass certain variables to the function module. It returns. It does perform some duties and returns some values back to you. Function modules are used within a SAP program. So when you're looking at an SAP program and going through the code, there are typically function modules that are inside an SAP program that you can go out and browse. Again, if you're a technical person, you don't have to really get sorry functional person, you don't have to really get this deep into the system, but I'm just going to give you an overview of what is a function. um, this is a function module to confirm, or let's say let's pick something nice. This is a user exit called for transfer the accounting header line. So if you're performing certain activities and your company would like to perform some additional functions above and beyond what SAP is performing, SAP has given you a user exit as a function module, and you're displaying the code for the function module, and then you can write your own logic how you would like system to perform. Give that logic to your SAP technical person, and then that person will code it. And system, what happens is it does the exit from the current SAP routine, performs a function, returns certain values, and you can use that within your application. So it's just a way of inserting or repeating your own kind of code. So let's go back to PSE 38. Going to that, say source code display. Let me go into, we have these include. It's called, yeah, here it says call function module. FAGL get represented ledger, that's a function module. So if I and that's how the topics are tied to, is you have a program, and then program calls a function module. Function module is FAGL get represented GL, and your function module in turn calls a user exit that performs something that returns a value.
What is the return value?
Anything. It could be, in this case, it is importing the ledger, and it is exporting leading ledger and company code. So it could be, you can define whatever you want. So this is the function module. How it is doing it is importing ledger group and company code, and it is exporting ledger. In this case, it is taking in and it's giving you something. It's like function module is nothing but it's like you give it something and it gives you something back.
As per our instruction.
Your instructions. Yeah. For functional people, I mean, this is as far as you kind of need to know. A program calls a function module. Function module takes some variables, performs certain action, returns you back certain data. Use the data within a program to do certain parameters, to do certain things. Okay. If I have to draw things for you, transaction code, okay, program, module, input, logic, output. That's how the logic works. Transaction code, program, function module takes an input that performs the logic, gives output back. Program uses that and ends the logic, very much. Okay. So we looked at the data dictionary. We looked at the tables, ABAP editor, function module editor. Okay. I want to get into a topic called idocs. Again, another simple way of explaining idocs for you is like this. It's you run a SAP program, create idoc. Idoc is nothing but a kind of a data set. Okay, and then the next steps are you can take the data set, transform it into a file, XML, EDI, okay, send it to another company, okay, again, transform back to idoc and load the data, okay. Or you can also do this, you can go from program idoc to, or actually like this, export idoc to again import using a program, something like that. idoc is a mechanism where SAP uses to transform data, to send and receive data to one system to another system. So there is any business logic, creating FI documents, creating creating vendors, creating customers, creating plans, all have idocs behind the scenes. So you run certain programs, and SAP creates something called an idoc, and you send that idoc or save that idoc to or transform the idoc to a flat file, XML file, EDI file, send it to another company, and then that company creates an idoc in turn, and then sends it, translates it back, and loads it back. So that's how the kind of the logic works up and down. So let's look at some of the some examples of the idocs. We go into WE30, you can see some idoc types. If you just don't know, or if you just kind of browsing or playing around with it, you can always say, let's say when accounting. Let me start with accounting. So this is called accounting document 1. This is an idoc type. I'm just going to open that up. These are all the segments within an idoc type. Means you're actually, in this case, this accounting document 1, what it's trying to do is you're taking the data from one system and moving it to another system. One example could be you have a system in Brazil where you post an accounting document, you're trying to move that to your US counterpart. Or you post an invoice and you're trying to send that invoice to your customer. You posted a material and you're trying to send that material to your vendor for some analysis. So there could be a lot of different scenarios where you create an accounting document, kind of send that and transform that to another entity. And these are called the segments. Segment actually holds the data within a particular idoc. So idoc is typically a collection of segments. Okay, I can go back in the segmentator. These are all the fields within the segment. Okay, this is the customer information segment, and the segment is typically within an idoc. An idoc is just a collection of data, basically. Let me see if I go back to my master spreadsheet. I should have some examples of idocs here. Exactly, I gave ACC document 01, ACC GL posting 01. Invoice 01 could be a really good one. So our most commonly used one, invoice 01. Invoice, let me look at that. Okay, and this is the invoice or the billing document. You can see there are a lot of different segments. If you kind of know what invoice is, you can kind of relate to that. There is general data, there is a vendor data, there is a reference data, there are conditions, there are deliveries, payment terms, bank data. Sometimes you may not be able to relate to everything, but sometimes you may be able to kind of relate. Oh, okay, makes sense. I post an invoice, and these are all kind of the same things that I kind of posted in the invoice. So after you post the invoice, you can export the invoice to an iDoc and send it to another person or another company using an iDoc. And these are all the segments within iDoc. Let's look at let's see the part information. Go to the segment editor. Within the part information, partner is vendor. So what is the vendor that you're creating for this particular invoice? And LIFNR is the vendor number, and it's the vendor name, vendor address, vendor country, vendor information. So kind of you should be able to relate to all these different information. So just right now, just looking at the shell of the invoice, there is no data. So when you're looking at the 3130, so you're just looking at the shell at this point. This is like an empty folders. It's like an empty spreadsheet with some tables and columns with no data. So where do you see the data, right? So there is a transaction called WO2, and it should be over there too. And this is where you actually see the data. This is where you actually see the iDocs that are actually created in the system. So let's see if there is anything created today. There is nothing. So I'll extend it to 2013. Then I can see these are all the iDocs that are created in the system. Nothing that we are pretty much interested in. I don't see any invoice, INVOIC. Let me see if I can actually bring up just that invoice one. Let's try it other way. Okay, lucky us. Somebody did create invoicing iDocs before, and they all look in status good, greens. So if I double click on one of these invoices, I can see who created it, when it was created, control data. I know this is the basic type INVOIC01. This is the port information, sender and the receiver, some technical information when it was created, and also some details. Okay, and I actually go say display iDoc with all the iDoc elements. This is probably the header information. That's the invoice number. That's a partner number. Is your vendor number is 3000. If I go back to, let's see, your document number, that's invoice number, and that's the date invoice was created. And if I open up, this is actually the pricing conditions and the accounting document numbers and the tax. This is actually the dollar amount is for $1,100. That's the invoice was for. So let me see if I can copy that particular document. I'm not really sure. Let me work that out from there. Let's see if we can look at 2000. It does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
I took out all of the things that are not Lego and I cleaned the dust off of my Legos. So I clean it.
Anyway, I mean, we don't have to go into the detail of actually mapping them to the actual invoices. Basically, I have to kind of go through, this is the actual document that was created. Look at the data, look at the vendor number, look at the document number, look at certain parameters, and you should be able to kind of tie this back to the actual document that was posted. So you can see the status. This was actually a document 53 means it's in a good condition. It got posted correctly or created correctly. If it is red, means it would have probably means it would have failed. Okay. In this case, actually, it says document. This is a document that got posted actually. See if we can try that back.
Who's on the call?
Okay. Anyway, I'm not able to tie this particular IDOC back to the source, but I think hopefully you got the concept. IDOCs can be inbound or outbound, so you can actually create an IDOC. This is an inbound IDOC, for example. I should have been able to tie this number back. Actually, it's an inbound IDOC, and somebody actually created a document, so it should have been, but somehow it's not there. You might have flushed it, removed the document, or somehow it's not there. And you can also see the outbound IDOCs that were created, but invoice was somebody actually created, posted an invoice using an IDOC of type INVOAC01. So to look at the actual invoice posted, it's WE02. To look at the segments, it's W30. To look at the segments, it's W31. To configure the IDOC, it's W20. W20 is we're actually doing the configuration for that particular IDOCs. Who is the vendor? Whether the document is coming inbound, outbound. What are the outbound parameters? In this case, vendor 1000 was configured for outbound to create the order changes, to create the purchase orders. So whenever, as soon as you create a purchase order for this particular vendor, each system should automatically create an IDOC. If you're working with a bank, for example, Deutsche Bank, system should be able to create a kind of lockbox data, lockbox file. It can kind of say this is going to be inbound, means you're expecting a lockbox file from the bank, and it's going to take it and process it and puts it into the system. So whether it's a bank, a customer, means you're actually sending an invoice to the customer, receiving invoices from the vendor, you're receiving the lockboxes from your banks. So you can define your business processes, where you're getting the documents, inbound, outbound, and come back here and can customize it. And it can also be from system to system. You can send it from one system to another system. That's called the logical system. So you can send it from machine to machine also. It doesn't have to be vendor or customer. Yeah, you can also do that over here. Any question for those folks who are on the line? It's like a question. So majority of the technical topics are in the tools section. And for any idoc ALE customization, you have to go into ALE, go into idocs. That's where you can see all the idoc customization or development. For any of the ABAP workbench concept, you have to go into development, go into AC38 in a program, AC37 for a function module, AC11 to actually browse a particular data, AC16 to open the ABAP dictionary. Okay. And also, let me touch on a few more things. Here, if you go into system, you go into services, you can go into batch input. Batch input is another a form of sending and receiving the data to the system. idoc is one form, one mechanism to send information out and receive information out, and your batch input is another form of sending or receiving the information. So you can go into batch input session. You can go into batch. These are all the batch input sessions that were created by certain users. A batch input session is also called a BDC session. Means it's recording a session. So any session that you're trying to do, FB50, MMO1, FK01, XK01, creating a customer, vendor, and all those things, so you can actually record that session. Using the recorded session, you can import and export the data in and out of the system. So this is another way of transferring the data to and from a SAP system. So if I can go back here, how to transfer data to and from SAP. One option is BDC, two is transaction, third one is idocs, fourth one is LSMW. Okay, there are 4 different types of moving data from one to and from SAP. We've seen the idocs. Now we kind of looking at the BDC sessions. BDC sessions is your batch data input sessions. Means any transaction, any session that you're trying to accomplish, like an FB50 for example. So let's say I want to load accounting data into the system, okay, or I want to load a particular vendor into the system. Okay, vendor is your XK01. I want to load I want to do a mass load of vendors into the system. Okay, so one way of accomplishing this really is using your BDC session. So to do the BDC sessions, you go into the services, batch input. You can go into your batch input session recorder, and you can do a new recording. I'm doing a test vendor. I know for vendor my transaction code is XK01. I can do a start recording of the session, so it actually brings me back to my vendor session. So I'm using 1000, 1000, 1000 as my input to actually create the vendor. So it actually remembers all these data elements. Okay, so I'm going to say BDC test, and I perform the same test as just like I would do for any other vendor creation process, XK01. Somebody put a page break here, that's why it's going to stop. Okay, so now I have a BDC session. BDC session is nothing but a form or a mechanism of transferring data to or from SAP. So I have a BDC session created. You can see that Lefner means vendor number is 1000, company code is 1000, purchasing organization 1000, OK code is just enter, enter, enter. Name is BDC test, my sort key is BDC test, my country is US, and it has lots of other data that system needs, the bank information and reconciliation information and information. Okay, now I can save the data recording session. Now I can play back this recording session. It means I can repeat this session over and over again any number of times that I want. Okay, I can process this session. Okay, means it's kind of recording. It's creating now brand new vendors. It's kind of repeating itself basically. So if I create one accounting data, I can use a BDC session to create more accounting sessions. If I create one vendor, I can use a BDC session to create more vendors. It's like a way of repeating your keystrokes. Kind of you can capture the keystrokes and kind of repeat many times. Okay,
Is there a specific format?
that's called the BDC format. Okay, so account now says that account 10049 has been created. Already created a new vendor for me. Okay, so so I can repeat this thing as many number of times as you want, and system creating more vendors. I can even take the create this as a program. I may not have the key or something like that. Yeah, it's going to ask me for the access key, which I don't have it. If I have an access key, I can create this as a program and run the program many number of times as I want. Okay. So we've seen the BDC means you can capture any screen that you're working on, FBO1, FB50, XKO1, any typical transaction that we normally do. Create a BDC session, create a program from the BDC session, run the program any number of times as long as you want. Or you can take any data, any transaction, create an idoc, and then use the idoc to actually import or export the kind of the data. Okay. The last thing I'll show you is called the LSMW. LSMW is called the Legacy System Workbench, and this is another way of actually moving the data. Typically, it's used for conversions. Conversion means it's a one-time load into the system. Let me open an SAP project, LSMW for something. So LSMW has like a 10-15 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 steps. And LSMW fortunately uses BDC sessions to load the data. So if you know BDC, you already kind of ahead because LSMW uses BDC sessions. So what LSMW does, which BDC session does not do, is it takes the input file. So you can take a CSV file, a fixed delimited file, any flat file as a source. Okay, you need to define what is your source, and you need to define your source structure, and you need to define the mapping, how you want to map your source to the destination. Destination is your object here, which we're trying to import, and create a BDC session. Okay, and then run the LSMW. So it takes the flat file, reads the data from the flat file, maps that into your BDC session, and then loads the data into the system. So it has like it says like kind of 15 different steps. So when you this in LSMW that was already created, but if you are creating something brand new, you have to create new. You have to create a project and a sub project and an object within a project. A LSMW example could be creating a vendor, the same thing that we did using the BDC session. You record the BDC session. You define your input parameters, how you want to actually load the vendor master into the system, and then kind of run the I do have a scenario, a detailed scenario for this LFLWS kind of. Let me give me a second. I'll play the recording instead of actually recreating the whole thing. Just give me 1 second.